Hi, howdy, welcome. So what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be sorting through, flipping through my sketchbook, this one. And this is the vast majority of the art that I made over the course of the year 2024. And I'm going to be showing off the stuff that I made and talking about like the materials used and the process of making it and sort of what my intentions were and how I think the piece actually came out. And sort of just doing an open and honest review of my own sketchbook. And my hopes for this is that A, it will be entertaining. I hope people will like looking at the stuff that I made. That would be ideal. And B, I want to sort of just, I hope that it'll be like interesting or useful or insightful or maybe encouraging for other artists. Because, you know, the internet is often full of, perfect images that people have created that they spent hours on, and you never see the time that was spent making them. You only see the final image, and you only see like the good stuff that artists particularly liked. Like a lot of people aren't posting their failures for obvious reasons. So my hope is that going through this, it will be maybe encouraging or at least interesting for other artists to sort of see what a realistic sketchbook looks like. So this sketchbook is not themed in any particular way. This is just sort of like my everything went in here kind of thing. As you can see, it's a Canson mixed media sketchbook, but there are a couple pages in here that have been glued in or sort of like taped into the rings from other sketchbooks and other types of paper, and when we get to those, I'll like explain that and say what kind of paper it is and that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's the general idea, is we're going to be touring my sketchbook and I'm going to be showing off my successes and my failures and that sort of thing. One thing I will say about the sketchbook tour that we're going to do, there are a couple pages that I did in here that I can't show you. Not because I don't want to, but because I did a life drawing study session in person. I went to a life drawing session and we were drawing a nude model who was posing for us. And for obvious reasons, I can't show you those pages because it's just filled with nudity. Okay, let us get started. So this is a sketchbook of 2024 stuff, but this one specifically was drawn at the very end of 2023. This is the only thing in here that is that was finished in 2023. So starting off on a bit of a silly note here. So this was done with gouache paint. I don't remember what brand. Does this say what brand? Royal and Langnickel Essentials Gouache and Brush. So this was made while my partner and I were watching an episode of Bob Ross, one of his painting tutorials. So we only watched like half of the episode. There was supposed to be a lot more here than this, because the specific episode that we were watching, I think I wrote it down, was called Season 15, Episode 7, Cabin by the Pond. So there's supposed to be like snow and a cabin and stuff on this like lake scene or whatever. But I ended up like stopping halfway through because I just liked how it looked already and I didn't really feel the need to add any more than this. But yeah. Like I said, this is done with gouache paint and the brush that came with that particular set. I like how this one turned out. I don't draw landscape stuff very often, so when I do and it actually comes out well, it's always quite the victory for me because it's not something I do very much. So this is from January 2nd, 2024 was when I finished it. I technically started the like sketch in 2023, but I actually painted it and finished it in 2024. This is also done with Royal and Langnickel gouache. This is my character, Albrecht. He's a OC original character that I have had since I was like 15 or something. I draw him a couple times a year just for fun because, you know, he's one of my characters, I guess. It's a little hard to tell from far away, but if you look up close here, if my camera will focus. Let me see if I can get this thing to focus for me. There we go. Okay, so you can see on the paper that his face is all like messed up. Like there's like a weird texture on the paint and on the paper. So that's because this was one of my first attempts at painting with gouache, and I did not know what I was doing at all. And I did a really, really bad job of mixing his skin tone on the first attempt, and it looked terrible, and I had to basically like lift all of the paint off of the page as much as I physically could, and then like try to take it all off and do a new layer and start again, because it was really genuinely awful. Like I completely did the wrong skin tone and it looked really bad. So the paper is all messed up because gouache is a water-based paint, and like this paper that it was drawn on, you can see I cut it out and glued it in here, was from like a dollar store sketchbook. And it did not exactly handle water-based paint medium very well. So it got really messed up. The paper got all like pilled in the process. So you can't tell far away, luckily. Like you can't super see it on camera. You can see it a little bit here, but not too bad. But when you're looking at it in person and when you're looking at it up close, it's very obvious that I like completely fucked the face up. But anyway, outside of that, when I did a little bit more practicing, and got better at mixing the skin tone, at least somewhat, I came back in for a second attempt and, you know, ended up actually finishing the piece, and I like the final result of it, but the actual like process of making this one was pretty rough. It did not go well. And that's just kind of how it goes sometimes when you're making art. And that's kind of how it goes sometimes when you are learning new medias and mediums and trying art supplies you've never used before and that sort of thing. That's just how it goes. For some background on me as an artist as well, like I would say like 80 to 90% of my experience as an artist is doing digital art. But I decided this year that I wanted to try to get more into traditional art, like actual physical art, like pencil drawing and painting and markers and that sort of thing, because I felt like it would be fun and I felt like it would be useful for me to go back and learn a bunch of fundamentals in a different type of art than what I usually do. So this sketchbook is sort of it's not really my first dive into traditional art, but it's my first dive in traditional art in a very long time. Because like I said, most of my background is in digital art. The only traditional art I've done is like just random pencil sketches. And then I did some like painting with my aunt as a kid when I was like 10. And then I took 2 art classes in high school where we did traditional stuff. That's it. I'm not a traditional artist, so this sketchbook is filled with me learning how to do traditional art as a primarily digital artist. So there's going to be a lot of like mixed bag results in here. Okay, next up. So these are some strawberries. But up here, these 3 ones here are strawberry tree plants. They're not strawberries. So this is done in a couple different types of gouache. Some of these around the like middle area are done with the Royal and Langnickel gouache. Some of them, I think these guys over here, and I think these 2 Oh wait, no, okay, this one was done with a Royal and Lang Nickel Gouache. I remember that. I don't remember what I did these ones with. These guys over here that are all sort of the same red and green colors, these ones were done with Winsor and Newton gouache. I think these two might have been watercolor, but I don't remember specifically. And then these three up here were done with Liquitex acrylic gouache, not regular gouache. But this was just sort of me doodling and messing around and trying to get used to how the different kinds of paint that I have feel, and just kind of getting used to painting in general. You can tell very much that like a lot of these strawberries around here were not drawn with a reference because they don't look that great. I don't think I used a reference for this one either, and you can kind of tell. But these are just sort of me messing around and trying to learn how painting works. This one up here and the strawberry tree plants I did use a reference for, and you can tell because they look much better. Yeah, this is just playing around, just doodling. Next up, this is the character Baiju from Genshin Impact. This was also done in gouache, I believe. I think the background, the orange background, was done with watercolor, with some Winsor Newton Cotman watercolor. And then the rest of it was done with Royal and Lang Nickel gouache, the starter set that I bought when I was like brand new at painting with gouache. So this is another one where it's like you can kind of tell there's like some texture to some of the areas, because I believe this paper was also from the dollar store sketchbook that I had, if I'm remembering correctly. So the paper doesn't hold super well when using watercolor and gouache, because it's like kind of terrible quality paper from the dollar store. But anyway, outside of the like kind of weird texturing issues, this one came out decently overall. This is still sort of very, very early in my like learning how to use gouache. So, you know, again, still kind of mixed results, but overall I think this one came out okay. I was getting a little bit better at trying to pick colors and mix them together and stuff. The set that I used for this has a lot of colors already pre-mixed, and I used a lot of those in here. But I think it went overall pretty decently. This is a gouache painting of the character Ocelot from Metal Gear Solid, specifically Metal Gear Solid 5. I don't like how this one came out. The sketch looks better than the final result does, in my opinion. I have a picture of the sketch somewhere. I could probably find it. This was, again, still very early in my learning how to use gouache. I think I used a different kind of gouache for this one. This one, oh, I didn't write it down. I don't remember which kind of gouache I used for this specifically. I think I used Winsor and Newton, and I wasn't using the like starter set anymore. I was trying to mix my own colors and mix colors together for this one. And the results are, in my opinion, very mixed, because over the course of the past year, I've come to realize that I don't actually know very much about color theory, and I don't really know much about how to mix colors, because as a digital artist primarily, it wasn't really something that I struggled with or had to do that much, because I could just like, you know, go around the color wheel and just pick whatever color I wanted. So now that I actually have to mix colors together and learn color theory, it's been very eye-opening about how much I don't actually know how to mix paint colors together, and I don't actually know that much about color theory. So there are a couple pieces in here that I feel didn't turn out very well, because I sort of, along the process of making them, had to make some like realizations about where my where my weak spots are as an artist, and this was one of them. This was still very new to me learning how to paint. And like, I mean, it doesn't look terrible. It's just not what I wanted. It didn't turn out as good as I wanted it to be. It's not like this is a complete failure. Like, it was a learning experience, that's for sure, but it still didn't turn out as good as I wanted it to be. So I find this one to be a bit of a disappointment for me personally. Okay. So these next two paintings, these were both done with Himi Mia gouache. So I'll show them one at a time. So this paper that is on is kind of not great quality watercolor paper from the dollar store. And you can see it's like super textured, but it's textured in a way that's like very clearly they pressed this texture into it. It's not like a natural paper texture. And the paper is very hard. It was like okay in terms of absorbency, but the paper is not that great. But I think overall the painting still came out pretty decently well for the most part. So like I said, this was made with gouache paint from the brand Himi Mia. And the website that I used for the reference for this, I believe, is called Pexels, which is, I think I wrote it down here. Yeah, pexels.com, uploaded by Lisa Fotios. So this is a little succulent on a, I think it was on a wooden table, like a picnic table kind of situation, if I'm remembering correctly. And then this one is the same idea. It's the same kind of shitty watercolor paper from the dollar store. And it was made with Himi Mia brand gouache paint. And I believe the reference for this one was also found on pexels.com. I think I wrote this one down as well. Yeah, you can't really see it because it got cut, but it was also from pexels.com, uploaded by Carl D, I think it says. But anyway. So yeah, I think these ones came out decently well overall. Next up, this is the character Raiden from Metal Gear Solid 2 specifically. This is that same dollar store watercolor paper from before that I put in here. So this is a character from Metal Gear that I really like and thought it would be fun to draw him. The pink background is a watercolor paint, and then all of the rest of the paint that I actually used to paint Raiden himself was made with Winsor Newton designer gouache. I like this one. I think the stylization on this one is fun. I think it came out pretty well. Next up, we got another Raiden from Metal Gear Solid. This one is Raiden from Metal Gear Solid 4, specifically. This was done in all of the color, the background, the hair, the eyes, and the coat and stuff that is done in watercolor paint. The sketch was in pencil, and then the lines were done in a fine liner marker. Or a fine liner pen, depending on what you want to call it. I don't remember specifically which one I used for this. And that's the same dollar store watercolor paper from before. I was just trying to get it used up because I only had a few pages left. So some of them I just drew on this paper and then threw it in here so I could get it out of the way. And here we have more write-in from Metal Gear Solid. You can tell I was going through a Metal Gear Solid phase for a little bit. This is, again, write-in from Metal Gear Solid 2. And this is done the sketches in pencil, and then the actual art itself was done in another fine liner marker. I think I did this with it was either a Pigma Micron or a Faber-Castell fine liner marker. I don't remember what brand specifically. I like how this one came out. I think it was pretty good. And here we have yet another Metal Gear Solid character. This is Venom Snake from Metal Gear Solid 5. This was painted with Himimiya gouache, as you can see at the bottom. And this is, again, that like shitty dollar store watercolor paper that I had, trying to get it used up. So this is Venom Snake. He's called Big Boss in that game. I think this one came out decently well overall. I was surprised at how, like, well it came out, considering I was still super new to painting, and was still really new to, like, figuring out the whole process of how to paint stuff, and how to mix colors and that sort of thing. And the paper that I used, like, this paper is not amazing, I'm gonna be honest with you. But it held up. Like, it held up to the water-based mediums. It just was hard to use because the texture is so hard and so, like, rough. But despite that, the paintings that I did on this paper still came out decently well. But I wouldn't buy the dollar store watercolor paper again, I can tell you that much. It was not, like, fun to use. And this is Jing Yuan from Honkai Star Rail. So this was done with, I believe this is also done in gouache. If I'm remembering correctly, I think this was done with the Royal and Langnickel gouache again. Did I write it down? Oh no, sorry, this is done with Himi gouache, actually. The same gouache as the previous one. I made this with my Himi gouache. This is that same dollar store watercolor paper. You can see it on the back a little bit. But I flipped it over to try painting on the side that didn't have the texture to see if it was any better if I used the reverse side, and, like, to be honest, not really, because this paper isn't that absorbent. It, like, I don't know, it's just not great. I don't love the experience of painting on it. So some of the stuff that came out on it was just, like, not the best because it was really frustrating to use the paper. So yeah, this is my guy Jing Yuan from Honkai Star Rail. This one's okay. It was kind of just like a sketch that I doodled for fun because I really like this character, and then just decided to paint it. There wasn't like a reference used or anything, and you can kind of tell because the proportions are a little wonky. Like his face is a little bit kind of odd down here, and the hand doesn't look great. And I kind of just covered it up with hair because I didn't want to deal with it. But I mean, it looks okay overall. This is just still trying to get used to how painting feels and learning how to mix colors and how to, like, layer gouache and that sort of thing. So this, once again, was done with Himi gouache. This is actually paper that is from this sketchbook, finally. So this was sort of an experiment. I did the sketch with, I believe it was with colored pencil, and then it was painted with Himi gouache. And so I wanted to try experimenting with a limited palette for this one. So this entire thing is made using only 5 colors from the Himi gouache set. I believe it was white, and then one of the reds, and then yellow ochre, and one of the brown colors. It might have been two of the brown colors. I don't remember specifically. I don't know if I wrote down which colors I used. I don't think I did. But anyway, I wanted to do an experiment of trying to use a limited amount of colors and just sort of mix them together and kind of see how far I could push the paints from the Himi gouache set. And I like how it came out overall. And the other part that I was experimenting with was sort of doing a little bit more of a stylized portrait. So you can sort of see that like the way that I did a lot of the colors and a lot of the facial features like is very angular and very like there's a very obvious transitions and very like harsh like line transitions between like the different colors. Just for fun, just as an experiment, I wanted to try something with sort of unnatural lines and shapes, and like very angular lines and shapes and unblended colors, just to sort of see how it would turn out. And you can kind of see that down in the shirt as well, like everything is the lines are very obvious and very angular, and like the colors aren't like softly blended together. So I was just trying to do a style experiment. This was drawn with a reference. I forget where I found the reference for this. I think it was from Pexels, but I don't remember 100%. I don't know if I have it saved anywhere anymore. I like this one. I think this one came out decently overall. It was a fun experiment to try to mess around with angles and colors and shapes and that sort of thing. I'm going to show... oh, hang on. I have a scanned version of this, and you can sort of see the, oh my god, this is huge. I wanted to see if the scanned version looks any better than the on camera version, because the colors are a little bit like warmer in person than they look on camera. They're a little bit like toned down. So this is sort of what it looks like a little bit more closely in real life. The light in here is a little bit on the cool side, and the colors that I actually used for this are actually a little bit warmer than they look on camera. So yeah, I like this one. I think this one came out decently overall. Next up, these are some eyes that I doodled with colored pencils or pencil crayons, depending on where you're from. And then these two were sort of just other experiments that I did with Himi gouache, where I was trying to just use two colors to make them. So this one I think was like the like peachy skin tone color, and then the like burnt sienna brown color I think is what this whole thing was painted with. And then this one I think was just black and white, I think was what I did this one with. They came out okay. You know, they're not like incredible. I didn't use a reference for these or anything, and you can kind of tell they're stylized a bit strangely. These were kind of just doodles. Like I didn't really like plan much of the anatomy here. I just kind of like went in with the paint and just messed around. Still just kind of trying to get used to how painting works and trying to just play around with limited palettes and see how that goes. So next up, we got just some hands. You can't really see super well, but these are just pencil crayon doodles of hands. And then this one is, I don't know if I have to cover this. This is a, I mean, you can't see anything. I didn't draw anything, but whatever. Just anatomy practice to just practice drawing fat bodies and how fat sits on the body, and just kind of doing shape studies and like the folds and the rolls and that sort of thing to get a little bit better at drawing different body shapes. The reference for this was from fatphotoref.com. And then the next page, we have more just doodles of of larger male bodies to, again, just practice anatomy and practice shapes and practice how different parts of the body sort of sit on or under each other and with each other, and just how muscle and how fat sort of intersects together, and how muscled bodies work and how fat bodies work and how muscle fat bodies work and that sort of thing. So just doodling and just practicing anatomy stuff. And then this one over here is just kind of doodling. I had some paint left over on my palette from some other stuff that I had been working on. So I was just like doodling stuff with a water brush here to get used to how water brushes work, just for fun to play around. And then these ones here were more experiments with water brushes and Himi gouache to try to get used to how water brushes work and how Himi gouache works and that stuff. Just messing around. Oh, this paper is the dollar store watercolor paper again. I think this is like one of the last times that it's in here. So this was messing around with Winsor Newton gouache, but still using water brushes because I like had just bought some watercolor or some water brushes, the paint brushes that have like the tube of water attached to them. So I was just kind of messing around and trying to play with the Winsor Newton gouache and trying to mess around with water brushes and figure out how they work. So these are just like doodles, trying to figure out the paint. And these down here were specifically attempts at trying to learn how to mix skin tone colors. They didn't go very well. The colors that came out from that attempt don't look amazing, but that's fine. It was just an experiment to practice. And then over here, these are some landscape doodles, sketches, studies, whatever you want to call them. So these were from the website lineofaction.com, and these were just done with a Unipin fine liner, it says on the side, and it was just trying to learn how to draw landscapes and backgrounds and nature scenes and that sort of thing, just because it's something that I don't practice very often and something that I don't really have a lot of practice with in general, so just trying to get better at drawing landscape stuff. The perspective on some of these is not perfect by any means, but I mean, you know, they're just little doodles to practice and study and get better at doing this sort of thing, so that's okay. They came out decently well overall, so I'm not exactly like mad about it. So on the next page, we've got more landscape stuff. These ones are from randomstreetview.com. That's where I got the references for these. These ones up here at the top were sketched with a Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pen, and then the colors were done with Crayola watercolor pencils. And then the actual paintbrush that I used was my water brush. So I took the watercolor pencils and then sort of just held them, and then took the paintbrush and like rubbed them onto the watercolor pencil, and then just painted with the color like that, instead of like drawing with the watercolor pencil and then using water after. So that's what these four are at the top here. These were done with the Crayola watercolor pencils and my water brush. Sort of same thing as before. Like, they turned out decently well. You can tell there's obvious like perspective issues in some of them, especially this one and this one, because perspective is not exactly like a strong suit of mine, and landscape stuff is not a strong suit of mine. But even despite that, I still think they came out decently well overall. And I was surprised at how like decent the colors looked for these being like Crayola watercolor markers, or watercolor pencils, sorry. I think they like did a surprisingly good job. Like, the colors are maybe a little cartoony, maybe a little unrealistic, but it still doesn't look bad necessarily. And then these four down here were drawn with Pigma Micron fine liners, And then the actual color was done with Winsor & Newton Cotman watercolor paint. And then just like regular paintbrushes, not the water brushes anymore. I think these ones came out much better than the previous ones. I think part of that is just due to the fact that by the time I had done these 2 pages worth of drawings, I was just kind of getting better at drawing nature scenes and landscapes in general. But there is also like a big jump in like the quality of the paint that I used for this. Like the Crayola watercolor pencils are not in the same ballpark as the Cotman watercolor paint. So these just look a lot better in general because I was getting practice and using a higher quality material. I think this one is probably my favorite overall. I think this one came out the best out of everything that I did for the landscape stuff. But I think these 2 down here are also pretty nice. So I have a couple pages in here that are kind of a problem to show off because these were done in pencil and they weren't really done in like good quality pencil. So they smudge really, really badly, so I had to put some parchment paper in here to prevent the pages from rubbing together and just completely ruining each other. So I have a couple pages in here that have this parchment paper on them that are going to be kind of annoying to deal with. So these are from a life drawing session that I went to, where the model was wearing some like old school costumey kind of outfits. She had this like elaborate like kind of robe gown looking thing, and then this like furry neck collar piece, and then like this old belt, and she had like a little headpiece on and stuff. So these next couple of pages are just going to be from that particular life drawing session where I was just practicing like how to draw clothing and how to draw like a model in real life and that sort of thing. So these were like 30-second sketches where she just held the pose for 30 seconds. So little warm-ups during that session, and then this one here where she posed for 10 minutes. And then on this page, she did this pose for 20 minutes, and then this pose for 30 minutes. This is from the same life drawing session again. Hang on, it's not focusing. So my main goal with this life drawing session that I went to was I wanted to practice drawing clothing, and I wanted to practice like stylizing people and clothing and stuff. So there's some aspects of these things that are like not exactly 100% realistic, but my goal was just to kind of get better at like how folding and clothing works, and how to like stylize clothing and how to stylize people and that sort of thing. So it was just overall kind of fashion and stylization practice, sorry. And then this is the same session, but in a different pose that she did for 30 minutes. Oops, hang on, the tape is getting stuck. There we go. So those ones were done in pencil, and then I believe on the next page, these 2, I just, I think I did a pencil sketch for both of these, and then went on top of them with fine liner. I think she was actually technically holding these poses for longer than what I wrote down, but I sort of like, instead of continuing to sort of refine the sketch, I just like erased them and then went in with fine liner over top. And sort of just like spent the rest of the drawing session practicing stylizing instead of trying to be like super accurate to how everything looks. I like this one. I think this is one of the best ones that came out of that drawing session. And then same thing here. Just I did pencil sketch and then did fine liner stuff and was trying to just kind of practice stylizing things instead of being super realistic. And so the next few pages that are here are from the life drawing session that I went to where there was a nude model. So there's a couple pages in here that just have too much nudity for me to be able to show on stream. So these were like 30-second sketches, very just like warm-up sketches where she held a pose for 30 seconds and was just kind of warming up and, you know, getting into the groove of anatomy stuff. And then, hang on, I gotta check to make sure the next page is not there. Okay. And then, so we've got more stuff here, which was, these were 1-minute poses. So still just like very loose, very warm up doodle sketch kind of situation. And then these ones here, she was holding poses for 2 minutes. So these are a little bit more involved, but I sort of had to like rush parts of them because I kept like focusing on certain parts for too long and then running out of time. So some of them are like much more refined than others because I just kept spending too much time on like certain parts of the body. And then the next 2 pages are just, it's just too much nudity for me to show, unfortunately, on stream, or I'll get in trouble. And then we have the last 2 pages here, that is just more life drawing session stuff. And then after that, so these are some fruits that I drew. These 2 at the top here were drawn with no reference. I was just doodling so that I could try to get better at using Prismacolor pencil crayons. The set of Prismacolor pencil crayons that I have that I used for this were gifted to me by my friend Gigi, which is Fluffans here on Twitch. She was very, very generous and kind to give me her set of Prismacolor Premier pencil crayons because she just wasn't using them. So thank you, Gigi. Everybody say thank you, Gigi. So these 2 at the top here were drawn without a reference because I was just messing around and doodling and trying to figure out how pencil crayons worked because I don't really have that much experience with them. And then these 4 at the bottom here were drawn with references to varying degrees. Like this one, I kind of was still doodling, but I was using references to get the colors correct to make sure that it actually looked right. But it's still kind of just like a flat doodle. And then these 3 at the bottom here, like, were actually completely referenced for the whole thing to make sure that everything looked right. And I believe these 3 at the bottom I drew on stream last year. Unfortunately, I don't have the video for that anymore. I had the recording for it, but when I made my new computer, my old hard drive crashed and died, and I lost like most of the files that were on my old computer. And basically like all of the videos that I had saved of like different art process stuff that I made last year just all got like corrupted and they're all gone. So all of the stream footage for these fruit that I made and then some like painting process stuff that was earlier in the sketchbook that I recorded last year, it just got lost. I don't have those process videos anymore, which is a shame. This was just me playing around with different supplies that I have sitting around. And I was trying to sort of see how different materials look when mixed together and when layered on top of each other, so that I could have like a better understanding of how to do mixed media pieces and how to like paint something and then use colored pencils or fine liners on top of it, or vice versa. And sort of which of the paints and which of the fine liners and which of the colored pencils and stuff that I have sitting around like actually work well together, which of them actually tolerate like layering on top of each other and that sort of thing. So this is just pure doodling and experimentation and messing around. And then on this page, so these are just some character portrait doodles, just for fun. They were drawn with my red lead in my just my mechanical pencil. And then I went on top of them with a fine liner. And yeah, just for fun, just doodling. I like drawing random characters and coming up with different character designs and doodling portraits of people and characters and that sort of thing. I think this is my favorite out of this group of them, because I like how I did the hair on this character. And I think the facial expressions and like the shapes of everything that I did on this character looks the best out of all of them, in my opinion. And then on the next page, this is just pure doodling. So nothing terribly serious going on here. These are just two anthro furry characters for myself and my partner that I just doodled for fun using some Posca acrylic paint markers. And then on the next page, so these are more character portrait doodles. So these are done partially with alcohol markers and partially with fine liners and colored pencils. So the two at the top here, and then this one as well, were done, like the major parts of the color of the skin and the hair are done with Copic alcohol markers. And then the eyes on this one and the blush on this one, the lips on this one, and the eyeshadow, and then the makeup and the hair were done with pencil crayons. This one I had to I was having trouble with the lines like showing up on this one, so I tried to go over them with pencil crayon, and then that sort of like made them like shiny and weird. And then I like overdid the hair and then like erased a lot of it and then went on and tried it again. So sort of like a little bit of lifting and a little bit of like, unfortunately this one didn't come out super well because I was trying to find a way to make the line, the fine liner black lines actually show up because it's such a dark skin tone, but I was sort of struggling to figure that out, and then I like colored the hair in a way that I didn't like and tried to redo it again. I still think the like actual character drawing came out decently, it's just I messed up a couple little things along the way. But these ones were just done with Copics, and then I added like some little details on top with colored pencils, and I think that came out a lot better. And then this one down here is done, I believe, exclusively with Ohuhu alcohol markers. And then the lines on top were done with a fine liner. but I don't think I used any kind of colored pencil in this one. And then on the next page, this is the same characters as the previous page, but I did these in Posca, in alcohol paint or sorry, not alcohol, in acrylic paint markers. So this was sort of just because the way alcohol markers work is the ink soaks into the page and then like seeps through the back. Like you can see these swatches down here are showing through the other side of the paper. And I was trying to get into the habit of like doing stuff on the back of pages so that I wasn't like quote unquote wasting as much paper. But alcohol markers kind of make it hard to do that. Because they seep through the back on the other side. So I was trying to find a way to be able to still use the back side of the paper. And I had just purchased some Posca paint markers and decided to sort of just redo the same characters on the other side, but with Poscas, so that I could actually like do something on the other side of the paper and also at the same time practice using Poscas and acrylic paint markers. And then on this side, we have more alcohol marker stuff. There's a little bit of colored pencil on the shirt on this one, but I think for the most part, the rest of all of these were done with alcohol markers. I think that was like outside of the lines. The lines are usually done with a fine liner. But I think other than the shirt, I think everything else was alcohol markers, if I'm remembering correctly. So this one is my character Albrecht again. And this was colored with Ohuhu alcohol markers. I went in and his shirt, when I draw this character, is usually white, but I tried to do like a gray here so that I could try to do like a shading of some kind, and I like completely overdid it, and then I went back in with a colored pencil to try to fix it and make his shirt white again, but now it has this like kind of gray textured look to it that it's whatever. I overcorrected something and then had to try to fix it again. And then these ones at the bottom here are also done with Ohuhu alcohol markers. And then on the back here, this is sort of the same idea as what I was doing before, is because alcohol markers seep through the paper, I wanted to do something on the back of the page. So I decided to redo the same character again, but in acrylic paint markers, so with my Poscas again, so I could try to get used to how Poscas work. And then for these two down here, I just tried to cover them in white paint, and the alcohol marker kept seeping through the paint for some reason, even though I kept trying to cover it up over and over again. And then on this side, we have more sort of mixed media stuff. This one up here was just a girl that I doodled, and then the base of all of the colors was done in Prismacolor alcohol markers. And then the lines and the like blush here, and then the highlights were done in colored pencil. These are just like little character doodles for fun. And then these two down here were done in Montmartre alcohol markers, which are like not the best alcohol markers in the world. They're pretty cheap, and I got a set of like, was it 8 or 10 of them from a like clearance store for like $15 or something. Like, they're not the best, and the color range is very limited, but they're okay for the most part. Like, if you're a beginner and you're looking for a cheap option, they're not terrible, but they're not like great either. And your only option is the chisel side and the fine tip side. They don't have brush tips on them, which is not really my favorite thing in the world. But despite that, I still think these two came out like decently well. I was trying to get creative with the colors that I had available because it's kind of a weird set of colors. I didn't really have much to work with, so I was trying to get creative and figure out what I could make with the colors that I had available. Like shy of like getting really funky with the colors and like doing like a monochromatic like blue whatever situation. And then next up, this is one of the my favorite things that I've done with Poscas. These are just some fruits that I made with Posca paint pens or paint markers or whatever you like to call them. I was trying to go for a very like graphic, cartoony pop art kind of style for these. I just wanted something that was like colorful and stylized and angular and sort of really playing around with the colors that I had available in my Poscas and trying to create something that was sort of just like interesting visually. These are one of my favorite things that I've done in Poscas because I really like how these came out. This one especially, I really like how the orange came out. Funny enough, this is one of my favorite things that I made last year because I just really like how this one came out. I think the way that I stylized it looks cool, and I think the like colors that I chose are very interesting. And it was just a fun experiment. I don't do stuff like this very often, but it was fun to just kind of mess around and try stylizing something in a way that I don't usually do. The rest of the paper is I just used white acrylic paint or acrylic gouache paint. I might have used my Liquitex acrylic gouache to cover up the rest of the page. Otherwise, you would be seeing the alcohol markers leak through on the other side. You can kind of see down here. For some reason, the I think it's the brown has like a lot of orange undertone in it in this one, and it would just like kept seeping through the other side. No matter how many layers of paint I put over top of it, that orange will not be denied. And you can see it up here as well. There, you can see the star from the mermaid girl that she has in her hair. And then there's some like pink from, I think it's was it the purple here? Yeah, there's like pink undertone in the purple here. That it's just so strange. No matter how many layers I put over top of it, the alcohol marker ink was still seeping through the other side. This is one of my old characters again, but a different character. This is Teddy. This is alcohol markers again. I hate this one. I think it came out really badly. I'm going to be completely honest with you. It's just the way that I drew his face, I don't really like. The way that I drew his beard, I don't really like. And the clothes, like, are fine, but they're not great. I don't know. And I didn't really, like, do much in terms of, like, shading or anything interesting because I was like really frustrated with how the face looked, so I kind of like did the face and then gave up on it. I think this one looks really bad. It's just a bit of a failure to me. But, you know, we live and we learn. And then on the next page, so this was another page where I like really messed things up. I drew a character on this side of the page in, I think I did like a colored pencil sketch or something. And then I tried to paint him in, I think it was regular gouache or something. But it came out really badly and I hated how it looked. And then I kind of just like covered the whole thing in black paint. And then drew over top in acrylic paint markers. I think. Wait, sorry. Yeah, it was Posca's plus Holbein acrylic gouache plus Liquitex acrylic gouache. So the black of the background is done in the Liquitex acrylic gouache, and then I believe the skin and the hair and the sparkles and the eye were done with Posca's. And then I think his like shirt jacket situation was done with acrylic gouache. I don't remember 100%. But anyway, this was another page where just like things were not going well. I was getting super frustrated and I just like covered a bunch of stuff up and completely tried again. And now the like outcome, now that it looks like this, is like not nearly as bad as it looked before. But this is sort of a situation where like I was just doodling a character and then went in to try to color it, and like the initial doodle itself wasn't great. I didn't really do like a great job sketching it and doing like anatomy properly, and that sort of thing. So it just sort of like the foundation of the piece was kind of bad, and then when I went in to try to color it, it got worse from there, and then I was like, fuck this piece, and just covered the whole thing up and then painted on top of it with acrylic paint and Posca stuff and whatever. So now it looks like this. There's always room to do something with it, I guess. If you hate how it looks, I don't know, redo it or cover it up with something and try again, or just scrap it and try again on a different page, whatever. It happens. It happens to all of us. And then on the next page, this is done with alcohol markers again, with my Ohuhu alcohol markers. So this is a demon character that I've had for a long time now. And I just hadn't drawn him for a while, so I just felt like giving him some love, because it's been a long time since I did anything with this character. So I was, again, kind of going for something that was a little bit more like angular and stylized, because that sort of thing is just fun to practice and experiment with every now and then, instead of doing like perfectly like rounded shapes and stuff. Sometimes I like doing things a little bit more angular just to mix it up a little bit. And this is still just like practicing with alcohol markers, because at this point in time I was still like very new to alcohol markers. Like the couple things that I did in the sketchbook before this were some of the first times I had ever used alcohol markers before. Like I think, which one is it? I think these, if I'm remembering correctly, I think these were some of my first ever attempts at using alcohol markers. I really was not familiar with them at all, and this is only a couple pages after that. So this was still like very new to alcohol markers and still very new to trying to figure out how they work and how to actually go about like layering and that sort of thing. And then on the next page, so this is just a very lazy, sloppy attempt at covering up the alcohol markers from the previous page here. And then this is the same character as the previous page, but just drawn in Poscas and drawn full body and just kind of doodling to cover up the alcohol marker stain from the other side. And then these ones over here are more alcohol marker doodle drawing studies, practice, whatever. These two up here I drew with Copics. I bought a like skin tone set of Copic markers, and then I had like a couple other colors that I bought from somebody off of Facebook Marketplace because they didn't want them anymore and they're pretty cheap, so I was like, whatever, sure. So most of my early stuff is kind of just with the skin tone set and then with a couple other colors that I got from somebody. And then these ones down here, or sorry, this one down here is done with Prismacolor alcohol markers. There was a shop downtown from where I live that had them on clearance, so I got a couple Prismacolor markers for like $5 or something. And the next page is, so again, just sloppily covering up alcohol marker stains from the previous page. And then, so this is paper that's like actually alcohol marker paper, because I wanted to try out and see how that actually works with my Copics and Prismacolors and stuff. So this is just a random character that I doodled. I believe this one was done with Copics and Prismacolors. I think like the skin tone and the, was it the hair, I think, was done with Copics, and then the sweater and the eyes were Prismacolors, I think, or something like that, something to that effect. And then this one, for people who play Genshin Impact, this is Alhaitham, one of the characters from Genshin. This was done with Copics and Ohuhus. I believe the skin was done with my Copics, and then everything else I think was done with my Ohuhu markers. This one came out okay. I intended for his skin tone to be a little bit darker than this. I think I sort of underestimated how dark the I think I maybe overestimated how dark the alcohol markers that I used for his skin were going to be when they actually finally dried. And I had already gone in with a couple layers by the time that I had finished this one, and I didn't want to like oversaturate the paper too badly, because this paper is like, it handles alcohol markers like well for the most part, but it sort of reaches its like maximum capacity pretty quickly compared to some other, because it doesn't. I'm not super like well versed in this kind of paper, but I just sort of had like a strange time getting used to it. And I think I like expected these markers to layer more than they did, or to just come out darker. I'm not sure what the issue was, but I intended for him to be a bit darker than this, because I prefer when people draw the Sumeru characters with a little bit more melanin than what they have in-game. And I originally intended for him to be a bit more tan than this, but I think I just used the wrong marker, and then the paper was just kind of like reaching capacity. I liked how I did his hair, though. I think the color that I picked for his hair was nice. So there's that, at least. The rest of it came out like, okay. It's fine, I guess. And then on this side, these are strawberries, as you can see. Wow. Amazing, incredible. This is more just alcohol marker practice, testing, playing, whatever. So these guys up here at the top were drawn without references. I was just doodling and practicing and messing around with my alcohol markers and trying to figure out layering and color selection and whatever. It's just practice. And then these guys down here were actually drawn following a tutorial that I found online. So, yeah, look obviously better than the other ones do. But I actually like followed a tutorial for these ones, which is why they look better. And then on the next page, we've got this fucking guy. This is Dr. Ratio from Honkai Star Rail. Mr. Never Stop Thinking himself. So this is, again, some alcohol marker paper that I just glued in here to cover up the alcohol marker stains from the strawberries on the previous page. This was drawn with my Ohuhu alcohol markers. Sort of the same issue that I had before with the Alhaitham one that I was talking about is this paper is a little bit... It's hard to get used to the way that marker paper feels when you're not used to like this really smooth, glossy paper. I don't know if maybe I was just like using it wrong, or like, I don't know, but I find that marker paper really reaches the limit of how many layers you can do really quickly. And I feel like it's maybe for only doing like 1 or 2 layers of color and being a little bit more selective with where you place your color instead of adding a bunch of layers on top of each other. Because I was having a similar issue with this one where like I would be layering colors on top of each other and sort of feeling like it wasn't making that much of a difference. Especially in his hair up here. Like I kept adding like layers on his hair to try to like shade it a little bit more to make it look a little bit darker in some of these areas. And I just kept feeling like it wasn't making that much of a difference. And like the paper was just sort of like not allowing them to like soak into each other. I don't know. And the more layers I was adding, you can't see it super well on camera, but there's like these like super dark lines that I did were in marker, and it was sort of starting to like mess up the paper for some reason. Like the paper was tearing a little bit just from getting too oversaturated with the marker ink. So it's just sort of, I was having a bit of a hard time with this marker paper because I'm just really not used to how it feels to use. So this one sort of has like this one has a bit of a mixed bag result to me. Like it came out okay, but like the process of doing this one was a bit frustrating. These are just doodles. I bought a Pentel brush sign pen, as you can see down here at the bottom, which is what all of the lines of all of these were done with. I just did some doodles to play with the pen that I bought for fun. And then the colors that I did on top, this one was colored with Copics and this one was colored with Prismacolor markers. Yeah. Just doodling. Nothing too serious or exciting on this page. Here we've got some legs. Obviously. Just anatomy practice, just doodling. Trying to get better at like how the hips work and how the knees work and how all of the different parts of the legs are actually connected together so that I can just get better at drawing people in different poses and full body stuff. Nothing too exciting. So this piece. This is, to me, in my humble opinion, one of the worst things that I did in my entire sketchbook, and I will explain why. It's because of a couple different reasons. So, I really, really, really liked the initial sketch that I did for this. The character here is Dionysus from Hades game, specifically. And I really liked the sketch that I did, and I was really excited, but really nervous to paint this one because I liked the sketch so much. I was kind of scared to go in and paint this, because I was still very new to painting and still very not confident in my ability to paint well and mix colors well, so this whole process was kind of a bit scary. And I made some really questionable and bad decisions along the process of making this that I think sort of ultimately led to this piece becoming a failure overall. The first thing that I did that I think really messed things up is this yellow right here, this like super, super bright, vibrant yellow is what I chose to do the undertone of the painting with. I don't know why I chose such a like bright, vibrant, strong yellow. Like it's basically a primary yellow. It's so bright and so saturated and so like powerful. And I covered the whole page in that yellow, and I don't know why, but because that yellow is the like bottom layer of everything, it changed the colors of everything that I put on top of it. And you can really see the effect of that in the skin tone, because I wanted initially him to have a darker skin tone that had sort of like a reddish purple undertone to it, because he's the god of wine and he has a lot of like purple accents and like grapes in his hair and that sort of thing. So I wanted his skin tone to reflect like purple being a theme for him and like a prominent color in his color palette. So I wanted him to draw him a little bit darker than he was in game, but I wanted specifically that purple undertone to his skin. But the problem is that purple and yellow are complementary colors that are opposite to each other on the color wheel. And what happens when you mix together colors that are opposite to each other on the color wheel is they neutralize each other. And they start to turn into grays and browns and desaturated colors and neutralized colors. So taking this like brownish purple color that I had made for his skin tone and layering it on top of a super strong, bright, vibrant yellow just ruined the color of the skin because they didn't mix together very well and it completely neutralized the color. And then another issue that I had on top of that was the fact that I was still very new to painting in general, and I don't think I did a very good job of mixing the skin tone anyway. It was too, I think, because I was struggling to actually like make a good color and make a color that matched what I initially wanted it to be. I think I ended up sort of neutralizing the color a little bit too much as I was mixing it, and then layering it on top of this yellow neutralized it even further, and it just like it came out terrible. His skin tone, you can see it on camera obviously, but it's a little bit darker in person. But it looks like ashy and gray and terrible. It came out very, very poorly, and he looks kind of sickly, and it just looks terrible. And then the rest of it with the robe and his little cape thing and his hair or whatever was just me like messing around. Like I was so pissed off that I ruined his skin and like messed up the whole piece. And like made this very poor underlayer choice that the rest of it was just me like messing around trying to salvage it and just trying to learn from what I could salvage from the rest of the piece. So me playing around with like trying to make the robe look good was just sort of like practicing using acrylic gouache paint, and just kind of trying to play around with how I want to do fabric stuff. Like that's why nothing in this piece really like matches. There's no real like color cohesion or anything. It was just sort of like I was like, this piece is ruined, so I'm just gonna like work on some individual parts that are not gonna look good together in any capacity. I'm just gonna like learn some stuff and move on, and then decide that this is a terrible scrapped piece. So this one to me is probably like the biggest failure in my entire sketchbook, and I'm really mad about this because I liked this sketch. And that sort of experience is part of why I ended up investing in buying a scanner, and now when I do a sketch for something, I scan my art, so if anything happens and I mess it up along the way, I at least have a scanned, digitized version of the sketch so I can like color it digitally or just post the sketch online or whatever if I ever like completely mess up the drawing in some way. So, lesson learned on that one. Don't use yellow as your undertone if the whole painting is going to be filled with purple. They don't work layered together. They'll neutralize your colors. That's what the kids, new artists, everyone in the world, color theory is important, and this is why. Learn from my mistake. Color theory is actually very important. Anyway. So, these are doodles. I was just messing around. Nothing terribly interesting or exciting on this page. It was just very lazy, very low effort doodles just to play around with the pen that I bought because I really like the Pentel Sign brush pen. And then this one is the marker paper again, and I was just sort of comparing the difference between what Copics on the left side and what Ohuhus on the right side look like on the same paper. Just to kind of try to get used to how marker paper feels, because I still don't think I like marker paper very much. So I just wanted to compare the two of them together and see how they performed on that paper. And then here we have, I was drawing some crows and a couple pigeons at the bottom. This pigeon here, the like pigeon ball, was just doodled with no reference, and it's very obvious because it doesn't look very good. This pigeon at the bottom I did actually use a reference for, and you can tell because it doesn't look like a... I don't know how to describe the no reference one. You can actually tell that this one's a pigeon, is my point. The crows I did actually draw with references, though, because I was trying to practice birds and bird anatomy and how to draw crows and stuff, so I think the crows actually came out pretty well for the most part. I like these two at the top. I think these ones are the nicest ones. And then on the next page, this is Boot Hill from the game Honkai Star Rail. So I sketched this out with pencil, I think, and then I started coloring it with Prismacolor's Prismacolor Premier pencil crayons specifically. And then I realized I didn't have any gray pencil crayons, like at all. And I realized that Boot Hill as a character design is like 90% grays, like different kinds of gray. And I didn't have any. So the entire piece was just me trying really hard to layer different pencil crayons on top of each other to try to create gray. And it came out okay overall, but it's a little bit messy because you can see, like, in these sections especially, like how much I was layering black and white on top of each other to try very hard to get like a neutral mid-tone gray. And from far away you can't really tell, like it doesn't look that bad when you're looking at it from here, but when you get up a little bit closer and when you're looking at it in person, it's much more obvious. It looks very messy. So I ended up after I finished this piece, I went out and bought some gray Prismacolor so I don't have to deal with that nonsense again. I still think this one came out decently well for the most part, though. The pose was just, like, from imagination. I wanted to do a sort of, like, dramatic, like, JoJo pose kind of situation, because he kind of is that sort of character. He does a lot of, like, silly, crazy, dramatic poses in-game, so I just wanted to do something for fun. And then on the other side, we have some more alcohol marker, character, doodle, portraits, whatever. I think this one came out actually pretty nicely because I think I did a good job on the, like, color choice when it comes to the shading and the highlighting and stuff. And then this one is also just in alcohol markers. So these ones are both just mixtures of the different kinds of alcohol markers that I have, which is Ohuhu, Copic, and Prismacolor. So just these two are especially to play around with like undertones in skin and like using colors for shading instead of just shading by using like the skin tone over and over again, or by using like a darker version of the skin tone. I was trying to actually use like different colors to achieve shading. So there's like, you can see there's purple, and that's what most of the shadows in this one are. And then this one, a similar situation, or a very dark purple for the shadows here. So this is sort of just like color practice. And then on this page, just drew some leaves because I wanted to just practice stylizing stuff. So this is a mugwort leaf that I drew in a fine liner. And then this is just from imagination. I was just playing around with lines and hatching and stylization and just kind of trying to create something visually interesting by using very stylized lines. And now this one, I'm pretty sure I can show this. There's no nudity. There's nothing showing here, but let's hope I don't get in trouble. I don't think I should. You can't see anything. But anyway, this is one of my favorite pieces from this sketchbook. So this is the character Aphrodite from Hades' game. And I drew her chubby because I wanted to. Smiles. So this was sketched out in a pencil, and then I lined it with fine liner markers. And yeah, this was sort of a similar idea of what I was going for with the leaves on this side, was I wanted to play with like line weight and line shapes, and by using like a lot of lines where it's like not quite hatching exactly, but it's sort of just like a lot of little lines here and there to try to create like shapes and depth and weight and like movement and that sort of thing. So this was sort of an experiment of trying to get better at like inking and lining and using lines to really like show like form, because that's something that I find to be really interesting. Like, I really like how this leaf came out because I like this sort of style of lines where the lines really, it's like sort of hatching, but not quite, to sort of show how the shape of and form of an object moves. And I really like this kind of style. So I was trying to implement that a little bit into like an actual character drawing. And I think the hair came out really nicely because I was trying to do that sort of style with her hair. I didn't do it too much on the body because the body was kind of just very like soft, rounded shapes, and I didn't want to add too many lines on her body or else it might have started to look a little bit over detailed. But I think the hair came out pretty nicely with the way that I did the lines and stuff. The next page that we have in the sketchbook is this one. So this was done, so there's a pretty big break in time between the Aphrodite one that I did. This was finished in September 22nd, but I started it back in May. You can see here. So this piece was started in May, and then I kind of like left it for a long time and then finished it in September. So I wasn't really doing much art stuff for most of the summertime. I just had other stuff going on. It was around the time when I started streaming and I was doing more art, or sorry, I was doing more video game stuff. So there was a huge break partway through the year. So some of the stuff from this area is a little bit messy and bad. So this stuff down here was kind of just like idly doodling and playing with paint while I was doing something else in the background. I think I was like playing League or something. And then I just had like a paintbrush and some paint on the side to just like doodle and kind of get back into the swing of how it feels to use paint again after like a several month-long break. And then these ones at the top here was actually trying to do something a little bit more serious. So these top two were done primarily with Himi gouache because I was trying to practice like mixing skin colors and coloring and making things a little bit more visually interesting. And then the lines for the eyes and the eyebrow on top of this one was done with pencil crayon. So like the skin and the eye color was painted with Himi gouache, but then the lines on top were done with pencil color, or pencil crayon, sorry. And then I think the entirety of this one is just Himi gouache. I don't think I did any pencil crayon on top of this one. And then this one is just in a fine liner, just with a brush sign pen. And then this one is with pencil crayon, just kind of messing around, trying to get back into the swing of traditional art again, trying to layer some different mediums on top of each other and just see how I feel about that sort of thing. And then on the next page, so these two are done in alcohol markers again. So this one up top was done in Prismacolor markers. And then this one down here was done with Copics. So both of these were just trying to de-rust and use alcohol markers again after that few-month break that I took. And then the next couple things, this was done with acrylic paint markers. This was done with a reference. I don't remember where I got the reference from for this one. It might have been Pinterest, I don't remember. And then this one was done also with acrylic paint markers as well. Also done with a reference. So both of these are done with acrylic paint markers, just more attempts at trying to de-rust and get back into doing art again and relearn how to use some of the supplies that I have. And then this one was sort of the same idea of trying to de-rust again. I wanted this to be sort of practicing doing mixed media stuff and practicing with like undertones and underlayers, but I don't like how it ended up turning out in the end. Because I think I did the clothing a little bit too stylized, and it doesn't really match the way that I did the face. And I think the piece overall looked better before I went in and did the pencil crayons as like a way to line things afterwards. I think it looked better without that, so I think I should have stopped after I just finished coloring with the alcohol markers, to be honest. And then on the next page, we've got more doodles with alcohol markers, just trying to de-rust and learn how to do art again. Trying to mess around with skin tone underlayers and undertones and get a little bit better at picking undertones for stuff. And then on the next page, this is painted with Himi gouache. Again, the same idea of just kind of trying to de-rust and relearn how to do art, traditional art specifically. And then the next page, these are sockeye salmon that I drew with a red pencil. I intended on painting these, but I kind of liked how the sketch looked, and I got a bit too nervous to ruin the sketch. So I never ended up going back in to paint them. But I do have a scan of these, so potentially I might either paint these, or I might sort of put them on my computer screen and then trace them onto a larger paper, and then paint the traced version of them so I don't mess up the original. The next page, this is the character Arthur Morgan from Red Dead Redemption 2. Sketched out in red pencil and then lined with a black fine liner marker. And then these two down here were just like little sketchy doodles just to fill the space down here because there's just too much white space at the bottom, so I was just drawing little chibi heads and faces. These up here were colored in alcohol markers, and it was just trying to practice getting a little bit better at doing grayscale monochrome stuff, but also trying to get a little bit better at understanding where lighting and shading actually happens around the eyes and which parts of like the skin actually are in light and which are shaded, and where the like planes of the face are with regards to people's eyes. And then these two down here were more studies to try to understand the planes of the face and which parts of the face actually get shaded and illuminated and stuff. So those are just face plane studies and shading studies. And then this was just a doodle that I don't remember what I was doing at the time, but I was just doodling this in the background. And I tried to go for something kind of stylized, but I ended up not liking how it came out, so I just never finished it. And then these were two like initial sketch ideas. So I was starting to plan out what I wanted my emotes on my Twitch channel to look like. So these were just little quick doodles to kind of get an idea down for what I wanted them to look like. forgot there was nudity on this page. So I've covered it up with my handy sticky note. But anyway, this is just one of my characters. Evale from... I originally made her in Guild Wars 2, but I'm probably gonna make her into like an actual just regular OC. There's an artist that I really like on Blue Sky who draws a lot of like big, strong, muscular ladies, and a lot of like ladies who are fighters and warriors and stuff who don't wear shirts, and it's like nudity that's very just like artistic. There's nothing like sexualized or anything about it. It's just very normalized in this person's art for women to just like be shirtless while working or fighting and stuff, and I just thought that that was really cool. To let them be depicted with like non-sexual nudity and non-like sexualized nudity. So I just wanted to draw one of my characters like that because I think she sort of fits that kind of role and theme. And then these are more just face plane studies. This I was just trying to figure out what kind of gray markers that I have access to, so just swatching stuff. And then these two are me studying the planes of the face and studying the Asaro head and studying like which parts of the face are actually illuminated and that sort of thing. It's been a big focus of mine, of something that I feel like I need to get better at and need to practice and study ever since I got really into Arcane and trying to learn things from the Arcane art style. They really do a great job at utilizing like the planes of the face and like the Asaro head kind of structure. So that's something that I've been trying to learn a little bit. Next up, we got Miss Caitlin Kierman from Arcane. Speaking of Arcane, this was sketched in pencil crayons. So this is just based off of the like official mock-up of her model design that you can find on the internet. The like official, I forget what it's called, like the artist who worked on her model has references of her, so this is just referenced from her official model in Arcane. And this was another sort of study of like the planes of the face and stuff, and I wanted to actually like get better at sort of trying to emulate the Arcane art style, because I think the Arcane art style is very beautiful. And then this is still a work in progress. It's not finished yet, but I took this sketch and then I scanned it onto my computer and digitized it, so I have a digital version of it. And then I projected it up onto one of my computer screens, and then I traced this sketch onto this paper. This is a much larger paper. This is watercolor paper. And I am currently in the process of painting this Caitlin sketch that I made. Things have changed a little bit along the way, and I need to sort of try to bring them back to how they looked in the sketch initially. But I am currently in the process of working on this. It's not done yet, but sort of something that I have found kind of cool and interesting is scanning in my art while it's like a sketch and while it's a work in progress, and then sort of making a bigger version of it, and then working more in depth on the larger version of it so that I have like the original copy preserved. It's good for my like OCD and anxiety about like things being perfect and about like ruining the original by overworking it and sort of just having like anxiety about how I want things to look. So it's been very helpful to get a scanner and then be able to like trace a second copy of a sketch that I've made and then do more work on the second copy. This is just pure doodling, just nothing interesting going on here. I bought a brush tip Posca marker because I had never tried them before and I was curious to see how they worked and what they felt like, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really like Posca's brush tips. The other acrylic markers that I have tried either have like the little plastic nib that's kind of like a fine liner situation, or they have like the little rough bullet nib, which I don't love those, but it is what it is. Those are okay. Or they have like brush tips that are sort of a little bit more like traditional, markers. So they sort of have like that soft, spongy kind of material to them. The Posca brush tips are much more like a paintbrush. In that they actually have like synthetic, like plasticky, like hairs in them. And it feels, I don't know why, but to me it feels really weird trying to use that kind of acrylic paint marker. I didn't really like the process very much. So now I just have that sitting around and I need to figure out what to do with it. So this is me just like doodling, trying to like get used to how the brush tip feels and kind of just not really having the best time with it. This is Vi from Arcane. Again, sort of referenced from her official model, and the like official art version of her that you can find on the internet. I don't love how this one came out. There's some issues with like the size and shape of some of her facial features that kind of makes her look too different than how she looks in the show. There's a lot of things that I feel like need to be adjusted to make her look a little bit more accurate. Like I think I made her face too long. She has kind of like a shorter and wider face, and she's got like wider cheeks. And I think I put her eyes too close together. And I think her chin is maybe too long or something. Like there's a lot of little details like that that have to do with like her overall facial structure that really make this sketched version of her look much different than like she looks in the show, and I just don't really like how it came out. So I might have to either just scrap it or try to like scan it and then fix it on a second page, or like try to edit it digitally or something. See if I can salvage anything with it, but if not, then whatever. Let's try again in the future, I guess. This was another moment of just like, I think I was playing a game or something in the background, and I was just kind of like, oh, I think I was playing League in the background, actually. Speaking of Arcane, I think I was playing League of Legends in the background, and I had just set up a, like, dry gouache paint palette, and I was kind of just, like, doodling in the background while I was waiting for League matches to start. So this is, like, nothing terribly serious. It's just kind of messing around and playing with my paint. This was a drawing that I did on stream a little while ago. This was an attempt at doing a mixed media piece. So it initially started with watercolors as the base for everything, and then I went on top of it and did a lot of pencil crayon or colored pencil stuff, and I just don't really like how it came out. I think the way that I like stylized things with the pencil crayons just doesn't really look very good. And I don't know if there's like an issue with like the way that I did things, but it was kind of frustrating using some of the things that I chose to use in the way that I use them. Like there's nothing wrong with using watercolors and pencil crayons together. It's just I think the way that I did it kind of just didn't feel good. It's something that I need to practice and play around and experiment with a little bit more. I just don't feel like I pulled it off very well in this particular piece. So, oh well, it is what it is. And then this was another one that I did on stream. Not this. This is just more doodling and messing around with a water brush to just play around with my paint. But these sketches, these doodles down here, were done on stream before Christmas, where I was just having fun, just messing around and playing with a little anatomy proportion tip that I learned on TikTok, and just doodling some people for a couple hours for fun. I put way more detail into this one than I initially intended to, because I started liking how it was coming out. And then this is more alcohol marker stuff. I got some more Copics because they were on sale at a place downtown over the Boxing Christmas Day week. So I picked up some Copics and then I was like practicing layering them with each other and swatching them to see how they're all working. So that's what all of these little boxes on the sides are. And then this one down here is just playing with some of those colors that I got to try to like layer them together and do like undertone kind of things. It didn't come out super well, but I think that's because a lot of the colors that I bought are like super, super, super pale. And then this one is done with Prismacolors, Prismacolor alcohol markers. And it sort of looks like a yassified Mads Mikkelsen. Completely unintentional. I was just doodling. This is just like a random from imagination character, and that's just kind of how they turned out. This is another alcohol marker doodle, just playing around, drawing a random person. And then this is that same character that I was talking about before, where I've been trying to design and develop her, and I've just been having a bit of a rough time trying to figure out what I want her to look like. So this was alcohol markers and pencil. And then I went on top of it with some fine liners to add in the black lines. You can kind of see the blue from the pencil that is like clearly coming through in her skin. Her nose and her face and her mouth are not supposed to be blue. That's just the pencil that is, I didn't fully erase. But I'm probably going to like completely redesign this character because I don't quite like how she's coming out so far. I need to figure out what I want to do with her. And then this is another character that I've been working on. So she's going to be a kind of like high femme, kind of very giddy, a little odd goth girl. I'm obsessed with hanging out in the graveyard, and she's kind of a weirdo, like ditzy, hyper giddy goth girl. I'm working on developing her as well. Does she have a name? Not yet. I haven't thought that far ahead. Names are something that sometimes takes a while when it comes to characters that I'm working on. I have a really hard time naming my characters. Sometimes that's like one of the last things that I figure out about them. I usually have either I like design how I want them to look and then I sort of like flesh out the details afterwards, or I come up with a concept and like an idea of what kind of character I want them to be, and then I design an appearance for them. And then like details about their life and their name and stuff like that come later. And then these are just little doodles. So I was trying to play around with some old like kind of gothic Victorian looking outfits that she might wear, because the universe that these two ladies are set in is kind of like a cowboy times, like late 1800s sort of era, and just trying to figure out like what kind of like gothic dame sort of outfits that she might wear. A lot of gowns and a lot of dresses and a lot of pretty girly stuff. And then this is the guy that you guys saw at the very beginning of the sketchbook. Where is he? This guy. He's the last thing that I drew in this sketchbook. Technically, he was the first thing that I drew in the sketchbook outside of the landscape thing. Well, I mean, he was drawn on other paper, but then glued in here. But anyway, you get what I mean. He's the first character in here, and then he's also the last character in here. Because this is my super old OC that I've had forever. And this was an attempt at trying to draw him in the arcane art style, or at least a close approximation of it. Trying to sort of figure out what he might look like in that art style and that universe, and I scanned this already, and I'm probably either going to paint it digitally, or I might trace it onto a watercolor paper and then paint it traditionally. I haven't really decided yet. He doesn't have glasses because I get lazy drawing his glasses. Sometimes I just don't feel like it, and sometimes I want to like design the face or whatever, and then the glasses will just end up covering stuff in an annoying way. So yeah, so this is Albrecht again. And that's my sketchbook for 2024. We did it.